What's going on, team? Welcome back to another video, and I am here in not so sunny Melbourne, actually. Flipping disappointing. Turns out all the pop culture references about Australia having permanently good weather were a little bit of a fib. So I'm here at Create Fit, or CrossFit Create, in South Bank in South Melbourne, and I say this literally every time I go to a new CrossFit gym. It's like, this is one of the best I've ever been to. It's not a shameless plug, they just all seem pretty flipping good. Today what I'm going to do is show people prepping for or serving in the military or hybrid athletes, the two groups of people that I tend to work closely with, how to elicit hypertrophy in the lower bodies, how to get a really good kind of lower body growth session in no more than probably anywhere between 45 and 60 minutes. A lot of us are busy. If there's a way that I can get a session done in 45 to 50 minutes and staying there for an hour and a half would get me 2% more, but it would take double the time. To be honest, for me and the lifestyle that I've got, that's just not worth the trade-off for such a flipping marginal gain. For most of the people that I work with, they are chasing an improvement in strength, in kind of physique, and also in conditioning. And when I believe that you can get kind of the baseline of all three in a short period of time, for the idea of getting an extra 2% hypertrophic effect for the sake of an extra 45 minutes, that's just not a trade-off that I'm willing to make, especially when I train kind of anywhere between 4 and 6 times a week. So as standard, and as seems to be part and parcel of the way that I structure things at the moment, the session will be broken down into 3 different sections. The first 2 are basically going to be more typical kind of hypertrophic superset tricep clusters with 2 different lower body exercises, one a little bit more quad based and one a little bit more posterior chain based, and then finishing off with a core exercise. So between 3 or 4 rounds of each, couple of minutes break, and then moving on to the next one. Muscular damage is the objective. It's the primary kind of sponsoring goal of the first set, and the primary exercise we're going to do is some deficit or front foot elevated Bulgarian split squats. I like to raise my front foot in this exercise to really make sure that I can go down a decent way, getting a nice stretch on the front side hip and knee and ankle before that back knee touches the ground. So just working at a much greater range of motion. A good quality, true 3 seconds down, and then nice smooth kind of 1 second concentric on the way up. 8 each side before I then move on to the GHD, and I'm going to do some banded hypers today. I'm a flipping massive fan of this, and this is a little bit more metabolic stress based. So the Bulgarian split squat is very eccentric tempo focused, but when we move away from that unilateral movement to the hinge focus exercise, it's a lot more dynamic, and we're just moving as quickly as we flipping can. And that one, actually, I'm not going to base around a certain rep range. I'm going to base it around a certain amount of time, and I'm going to do between 20 and 30 seconds of kind of pulses on these banded hypers. I'm then going to move on to a core exercise, and to be completely honest with you, I haven't flipping decided what that is yet. 8 to 10 on each side for the Bulgarian split squats, 3 seconds on the way down, 1 second smooth concentric, and then 20 to 30 seconds on the banded hypers, and then a core exercise that you guys will see in a few minutes. Jump straight in, guys, let's go. Two sessions done already. 2 sets done already. Oh, so the caffeine hasn't kicked in yet. The rest time between actually seems pretty decent. Maybe my conditioning's a little bit better than I thought, but the Bulgarians feel nice and smooth. And I'm definitely just slightly transferring my weight forwards onto the front foot on the eccentric phase. Then if I need a little bit of help, then I can kind of use both. I can use that back leg a little bit, but considering we're focusing, again, it's not necessarily the exercise you're doing, it's how you're attacking it, it's the objective. The way that you execute and the way that you perform a certain exercise has to be reverse engineered from what the flipping goal is. So if the goal is muscular damage, we want to control that eccentric phase and kind of tear a few more muscle fibers on the way down. So that is what it did. The hypers are definitely hitting my lower back. I've got to make sure I keep my core nice and tight, keep that kind of that transverse abdominis kicked in, and then from there it should be all gravy. And I went for levers actually for the core exercise, kind of core, kind of back, but just trying to really make sure that I can feel that contraction and kind of feel the holding position at the top. 5 reps of that, but it's enough waffle for me. Let's get back in for set number 3. hypertrophic huge legs section 1 done. And in the bag, it's been raining, can you believe it, on my summer holiday. So that bit is done. Again, I'm a big fan of kind of supersetting some more anterior chain-based single leg work with anything that's posterior chain-based, kind of hence the Bulgarian split squats, obviously very, very quaddy, with some kind of glute and hamstring work in the form of the reverse hypers. I'm going to do a different variation now. Now, in terms of hypertrophy, obviously we've done the kind of the muscular damage in the form of the controlled eccentric. So again, the devil's in the dose. You don't respond a particular way because of the exercise you're doing. You respond a particular way because of the way that you execute the exercise. Like, do squats make your legs bigger? Well, again, it kind of depends how you do them. If you did 1,000 bodyweight ones for reps, it's really good for lactic and kind of the natural dynamic nature. If you're doing sets of 3 at 80% with 2-3 minutes between, focusing on the concentric, it's going to develop speed and power and that kind of RFD strength. And if you do 5-3-1, overall your maximum strength, that range is going to get bigger. So again, it depends the way that you execute. But what we are going to do now, sticking with the anterior chain single leg based stuff, supersetted with some posterior chain, super simple, a little bit more metabolic stress based now. I'm going to do some sled pushes, which I flipping love at the best of time, supersetted with some RDLs and another core exercise I haven't yet decided. This one, again, metabolic bodybuilding, keeping the rest fairly low, enough that you're not compromising form, but being slightly out of breath when you move into the next exercise. Just again, it is one of the best kind of signals you can give to your body to ensure that you drive the adaptation of growth hormone response. If you're taking 4 or 5 minutes between sets every time, you're not going to get that growth hormone response. So sled pushes at kind of a decent weight. I normally just do 2 lengths. I'm actually going to do 3 today just to increase my time under tension for the sleds instead of making it heavier. I'll keep it at a moderate weight, a cadence that I feel comfortable with. It's keeping that turnover quick enough that it's building that lactic. And then from there, some RDLs for about 8. I'll control the eccentric on this because obviously on the reverse hypers, it was a little bit more dynamic focus. So this time I'm going to do a posterior chain exercise that's a little bit more muscular damage focused. So basically, as you can see, guys, we just flipped it round. And then the core exercise, again, we'll see what comes up. Let's go. Set number DOS done, 1 more. It seems to be a little bit of a theme that I do 2 of my 3 sets and then come out here and explain something. Probably for 2 reasons really. Number 1, I just want to maintain as much intellectual credibility as possible and give you guys some proper intellectual substance in these vlogs. And number 2, I'm ball bagged, gives me an excuse to have a little bit of a longer break. So first 2 sets done, the sled moves so flipping smoothly. I do want to get a bit of a lactic burn and the turf almost just doesn't feel as long. So I'm actually doing 4 lengths now and I've put a little bit more weight on top, but I think that's kind of necessary. The RDLs are feeling really flipping good actually. Grip's not fatiguing, kind of upper back, which is a lot of the time with kind of high time under tension for any kind of hinge movement, any deadlift variation. A lot of the time, you know, hamstrings and glutes might have it, but you grip and your upper back and everything starts to kind of pull forward, but that's feeling okay. And some counter rotations as you saw for the core exercise, still using the GHD, and that's going quite well. But again, flipping heck, you've told me once, you told me a million times, I apologize for fucking around. Set number 3, let's go. All 3 sets now done and in the bag, so that's section 2. That's the second kind of hypertrophic tri set. some single leg anterior chain based stuff. So single leg builds control, balance, stability, all the things we need to actually make sure that we're functional and that we keep in this game for a little bit longer. And it's a little bit more anterior chain based, they're quad based, these single leg exercises. Superset with something that's a little bit more posterior chain based. Some of them are nice and dynamic for a little bit of metabolic stress, and some of them are a little bit more muscular damage focused with some eccentric tempo. And now what we're doing is moving on to section 3, which is a completely different paradigm. All we're going to do some bike sprints and some carries. We're going to do some carries first to kind of pre-fatigue a little bit, and then some bike sprints just to dump some lactic in our legs. Kind of a minute, 90 seconds-ish, 3 times through. Let's go. And just like that, the session is done. That is lower body hypertrophy done, or hypertrophy, depending on your preference. Got some anterior chains, so some quad dominant work in there, usually superset with some posterior chain dominant work. We've got some core work thrown in there just for good measure. We're executing some of them in a slightly more kind of dynamic pump way to get a little bit of metabolic stress, and some of them are a little bit more eccentric tempo focused, basically to deliberately incur a little bit of muscular damage. Really hope you did enjoy this video, guys. If you did, please do smash that like button. Again, it only takes you a couple of seconds, but it's incredibly beneficial for me and the channel. Any questions on anything covered today, please do put them in the comment section down below. And as always, you bunch of flipping legends, stay strong, stay healthy, stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next video.